Alright everyone, welcome back to another Play and Explain video here. Today we're playing an arbitrary rural world, and I think we're going to take it to the hardest notch of arbitrary rural world, and we're going to play some NMPZ games today, and kind of show you what I look for on NMPZ rounds. There is a lot of metagame involved, of course. Copyright is very important, I think, which, you know, back in the day didn't used to be as important, but now I feel like everybody uses copyright, so it's just something that you have to adapt to if you want to be like a pro at GeoGuessr in that way. Not saying I know all the copyrights, I'm just saying I know the basic ones and twos of it, so I think it's very useful in that sense. So let's hop into NMPZ streets here, and yeah, we'll start off in this round in arbitrary rural world, in which we can see this box blur here on the car. So that should indicate with the Spanish that we are in one of two places, most likely. The Dominican Republic and Guatemala. And I would say this one's more Guatemala. Guatemala does like to use a bit more pole paint on the bottom of their poles. And I feel like you would not get this much of a rolling hill landscape in the places of the Dominican Republic that are covered, which is going to be the Santo Domingo like urban area, which is basically, you know, you'll see a building everywhere. And then this coverage can get a bit more rural, but we are looking north, and you would usually see a pretty big ridge, which you can see here on the map, just north of Santiago de los Caballeros, which doesn't appear to be here. We do see like a little bit of a peak, but it's not a consistently long ridge to the north. So I think Guatemala is the best bet, alongside the painted poles and the Spanish, and we can send that one in. It was a bit more west, but we're just working on getting the country here. All right, this one also a bit difficult because we don't have infrastructure at all, no poles to work off of, nothing like that. I do notice that the sun is kind of in an eastern position here, so it's quite ambiguous. But with the yellow center road lines, we really shouldn't be in Europe aside from Greece, and the climate is definitely just very wrong for Greece. So with that, we can consider most of the stuff in Americas. I'd say driving right. We can tell we're driving right because we have the little gap here as well. And, you know, these cat eyes or whatever they're called, whatever you guys call them, they are quite common in most parts of the Americas in general. Now, we have a double yellow line, which, you know, Mexico typically likes to use single yellow line. Can use double yellow line occasionally, but most of the time it will be singles. Whereas Brazil, on the other hand, loves to use a double yellow line. They love to put cat eyes in the middle of their double yellow lines, just for help with, you know, on dark nights, I guess it's easier to drive because you have a little bit of refractory there. And I think it quite fits for the sun. Because as you can see, Brazil is quite close to the equator, so the sun can be quite ambiguous sometimes. Region guess-wise, it is a bit hard. I'd probably just put it somewhere northeast. I'd say we do have some rickety fences. Not super rickety, but they are wooden, which would put you maybe a bit more north in the country, but it's a bit hard to say. I think I'm just going to leave it in Goiás here. And yeah, was a pretty good region guess, North Minas Gerais. But Brazil, double yellow line most commonly. Mexico, single yellow line most commonly. All right, next round here. This one's a bit more of a difficult one as well. We do notice we do have Gen 2 here. It is a bit blurry at the top, bit large blur at the bottom as well. So we're thinking mostly Western Europe on this one. And once again, we have this rolling hill landscape. So with this and these hedgerows, which I would say hedgerows are quite common in parts of France, especially northern France, sometimes in Belgium, and then England, Ireland, Scotland, Northern Ireland, all that stuff, and Wales and stuff. And with these little like towns here, just look dotted around, house maybe looks stone or something like that. I think the architecture probably fits best for England, especially with the rolling hills and stuff, and how small of a dirt road path this is. It could certainly be northern France as well. There's parts in Brittany and stuff like that that does have rolling hills like this. But I think the landscape fits a bit too well for England. So with Gen 2 camera, plus all the hedgerows and the fields being sectioned off and stuff like that, plus some of the houses that I can see, I think with all of that, Wales or somewhere in England is probably the best bet. And it was England, but northeast of Bath there, which is fair enough. On rural rounds especially, you won't always get the country, so you just want to make the best guess that you possibly can with the information that you have. And that's kind of what I'm trying to provide, and I'm trying to do the same thing here as we try to get a nice little 25 streak going. All right, moving into this round, we do have a 2021 copyright. It is 2021 copyright, I think, unless it's 23. Regardless, doesn't really matter. We can see a little red dot on the front of the car. That indicates, they couldn't completely blur out the color of the car, but it is going to be a quote-unquote red car in Gen 4. Gen 4 we can tell because it is just a crisper image than we see in Gen 3. And with this red car, plus like this sandiness and a much lower tree line than we would get in most of Russia, region guess-wise, we should be Surgut and North with the red car, plus, the sandiness. Railway also fits as well, and, a lot of road construction being going on around there. And you will get these segmented concrete blocks quite commonly in most of the northern Russian roads. It's probably, I would want to say it's probably easier to maintain because it does snow a lot, or roads do freeze over, so it's probably easier to maintain than just having to keep repaving the roads when it cracks from the ice, essentially. But what else tells me this is Russia? The 2021 copyright is very useful because you'll mainly get that in Russia and then most of the Western European countries, alongside a lot of the other. But in Europe, you will mostly get that in Russia, the Western European countries, and then Norway, Sweden, and stuff like that. Bulgaria also has 2021, but a lot of the other countries in Europe won't have 2021 Gen 4 copyright. So Romania has a very small bit of 2021 Gen 4. Hungary 2022, Slovakia 2022, Croatia 2022, Slovenia 2022, at the minimum. So I think Russia is a good bet. And I think this red car is probably the biggest hint that's going to tell you that it is northern Russia, especially Russia in general, because this is the only Gen 4 car, at least to my knowledge, that's going to have that red dot at the front of the car. So was all the way up here. And we'll move into round 5. So we do have this boxy blur once again, but we do this time have a white center line, which, is not going to put us in Guatemala or the Dominican Republic because they would be using a yellow center line. Also, this pole looks quite Soviet, stuff that you would see in Russia, Ukraine, other former SSR countries. With the box blur and the Soviet-looking pole and the autumn coverage, probably late autumn coverage here, like October or something like that, that should all point towards Kyrgyzstan. And pretty simple one. We'll slam that one in. It was Osh. Fair enough. But we are on a 5 streak. Okay, this is a very difficult round, I'd say. And not one that I particularly look forward to. The first thing that I noticed, though, is that the soil is quite red. Copyright, more or less, doesn't really matter here as much, I would say. But we do have a Gen 4, some colored car. It looks like maybe light blue. Which, can be found in a lot of places. But the other thing that I noticed here, I was in a small 50-50 between Indonesia, just because of the landscape and the climate, and something like Brazil with the red soil, because both Indonesia and Brazil, or Thailand even, can have this red soil. But I did notice the cactus here, which would pull me a bit more towards Brazil, I would say. Indonesia and Thailand, I want to say, doesn't really have cactus like this, or at least can't confidently say it, but I would say that's probably the best thing that I could use in this case. And the light blue car makes sense for Brazil as well. So I think all of those clues kind of point me towards Brazil, especially the red soil here. You can't go wrong with slamming Brazil on red soil usually. And with the cactus, I'll just leave it in Bahia or something, somewhere northeast, where it's a bit more of a dry, deserty climate as you get closer to the equator. So it was Alagoas, but we are in the right country, so that puts us on a 6 streak. All right, here we go with the next round here. First thing I noticed, Gen 4 blue car here, 2024 copyright, and we do have this yellow diamond sign, so a little bit of a clue for us that could help us on this round. Sun is north, I want to say. It's a bit hard to tell. It does look like it's kind of right above us, but the shadows are somewhat casting to the south here, as you can tell by this little stock here. I think that's a good way to determine, obviously, where the sun is just by looking at shadows, as many of you know. With the yellow diamond sign, we should be somewhere in the Americas, because the Americas is going to use the sign. The only place in Europe, to my knowledge, that uses the sign is Ireland, and that sign would be on the left, and this obviously doesn't look like Ireland. With this very, like, kind of deserty climate as well, and the yellow sign here, I would probably say this is Chile, because we have very, very dry rolling hills, so we're kind of moving out of the Atacama Desert into a bit more of a green climate, but not quite to the point in which you get, like, down here, near, like, O'Higgins stuff, or, like, near the famous lakes near the Newquid border. But all of those things, I think with the dryness, we know we're in the Americas at least because of the diamond sign, and it's about ruling out countries in your head. I don't think it's Mexico because the sun is north. This is casting a shadow south. So we shouldn't be in at least north of the equator, in my opinion. Colombia, don't think would fit, especially with this landscape. It feels a bit too dry for most of it. Peru maybe could fit, but the hills feel a little bit off, and it definitely feels a bit more south and temperate than, you know, it would like in this area here. And Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil don't really feel like it fit to me either. I mean, it could be somewhere in Argentina, but I think with all the knowledge that we're using here, I think Chile is probably the best guess. Like, Peru would also have a stripe signpost, so we can rule that one out. Yeah, I think Chile is the move, and it was southwest of Santiago there. Fair enough, we're on a 7 streak. All right, we'll move into this Oman here. I do believe, actually, it's Qatar. And the reason why I can't mess up this 50-50, right, is because we're using a beautiful thing called copyright. 2023 copyright. Oman is not going to have that. It's only going to have 2024 and 2025. Might have 2025. It probably does, honestly, because, yeah. But Qatar was completely covered in 22 and 23, I want to say, or maybe just 23. But if you see a 23 like this, and you can tell you have a car blur, and you know you're driving right, because if we were driving left and we were looking forward, we would definitely see something on the car. So we can rule out stuff like Kenya, stuff like that. I mean, it could be Senegal, but I think these sandy hills are feels a little bit off for Senegal. Like, the climate feels a bit more Middle Eastern than it does African, if that makes sense, even in Senegal. So with all those things, you know, we can go Qatar. Actually, it could be UAE as well, but I think Qatar is probably the best bet, and it was. All right, we'll move into this round, not the easiest round, 2024 copyright, first thing I really notice. But we do have a lot of these, like, aspen trees, or I don't know if they're aspen or birch, but we do have a lot of these pines as well. So it looks quite northern to me. Sun is casting shadows to the north, so we know we're in the northern hemisphere, at least. And with this very wide road, I would lean more Americas over stuff that we would see in Europe as well. You get a lot of dirt road coverage, especially in Canada and northern US and stuff like that. With how north it looks, I think I lean more Canada, I'd say, than the US. You know, it could certainly be stuff like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, stuff like that. But I think probably with what I'm looking at, I think by process of elimination, Canada is probably the safest bet here. Region guess-wise, it's a bit tough. Ontario was New Brunswick. Fair enough. Makes sense. That's going to be a 9 streak, though. All right. This one, we have a ton of gorse, which is going to be like these yellow flowers here. And we have a Gen 2 camera. I think when I see like this much gorse plus a Gen 2 camera, I think I automatically default really to Isle of Man. It's probably the fakest meta of all time. Could be a bunch of other things, like we have very white houses with like grey roofs, which is quite common in Ireland, of course. Could be Northern Ireland too. But I think it probably fits best for Isle of Man here, so I think I'm going to try it. It was just Isle of Man. Nice, that's a little 10 streak. And we'll move on to this round, which appears to be Indonesia. So we can tell we're driving left because we have the little gap here where the car antenna would be on most cars with that actually have an antenna. And we have this metal pole here with the 3 insulators on the top, which are quite common in Indonesia. Now, the other thing that's telling me Indonesia here is it looks quite Southeast Asian. We have a bunch of palms, which means we're in a bit more of a tropical climate, and we're driving left. So, I mean, that kind of rules out most of the tropical stuff in South America. And it rules in a bit more of the tropical stuff in like Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia, especially. Philippines drives right, so we're not there. Cambodia doesn't have Gen 4, and they also drive right. So, and Bangladesh, don't think this pole really fits with the insulators on the top. So that leaves us with Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. Thailand would have a different style pole, as I mentioned, the square one with the dots going up and down the top to all the way to the bottom. Malaysia would also have like a rounder pole, rounder concrete pole. I haven't really seen a metal pole like this in Malaysia. So I think that does leave us with Indonesia. And with the symmetrical metal pole, I think West Kalimantan is a reasonable guess. It could be a couple other things, like somewhere in Sumatra as well. But yeah, was just West Kalimantan there. Nice 11 streak here. And we are in somewhere. Ooh. This one, I feel like I might not get this one right. I think it's very possible that I don't. Definitely feels like Europe, though. It's a very thin road. I feel like most places in the Americas, you would generally get a bigger road than this. Allegedly. With the very thin road, I definitely lean more England or the UK or Ireland, essentially. And yeah, it's really just a toss-up on this one. So you want to make the best guess possible with the amount of info that we have, and we don't have much info besides the thin road, the fern, some of these trees. There's a small fence here. So I'm really between this, and this. And to me, it feels most Irish, just vibes-wise. So I'm going to try it. It was just down near Plymouth there. So, I mean, this isn't a bad guess, all things considered. We got the British Isles technically correct, but we do lose the streak there. So we'll move into this round, in which it's a bit hard to tell our driving side, but we should be able to tell that the shadows are casting south here. We can see that casting into the field. So the sun is in the north, which means we're in the southern hemisphere. And a lot of these, like, I don't know, these kind of trees, you will see a bit more in drier climates, and I think Australia really fits the bill here the best. South Africa, it can't be, because we would pretty much always see the blue car with the antenna sticking out of the back. And we can tell we're looking at the back, because you can see a little bit of dust coming up from the road that we're driving on here. So we know that we're looking at the back of the car because we see the dust flying up behind us as we drive. So yeah, Australia makes the most sense. Was just Vic there. Very nice. And we'll move into this round, which is also not the easiest round, I'd say. I could actually see myself going the wrong continent here as well. Yeah, not the easiest round. I'm a bit between like Canada here and Denmark, maybe. Not easy. We do have these rolling hills, which I would associate a bit more with Denmark, but I just think this very wide gravel road is a bit weird for Denmark, so I think I lean more Canada in this case. I guess it's not really gravel, but it's just a wide dirt road. I definitely associate more with Canada. Yeah, we can tell the sun is a little bit ambiguous, but I mean, there's no way this is anywhere in the southern hemisphere that I can think of. The trees could fit for somewhere in Canada. Something like Sask or Manitoba, one of the plain states. Yeah, I don't know if I have too much to teach you guys here because I'm not really too sure on the country myself. But we'll drop it in Manitoba. It was just the US actually, so yeah, maybe the trees felt a bit more south. I feel like these trees definitely felt a bit more south here, especially with the darker barks. Yeah, I think I should be getting Texas here, but it just didn't come to mind in the moment. Because I couldn't think where in the US would have a landscape like this, but I guess This part of Texas is kind of diabolical, but it does make sense. It does make sense, and can't be too mad at myself for it, but it is a bit of a poor miss. All right. This round here, really not quite sure either. I think I've narrowed it down to 2 countries, but I'm not quite sure which one it is the issue. All right. So the first thing we notice is sun is slightly north here. The shadows are casting south, it looks like. But it is a little bit ambiguous. Big mountains. And it is Gen 4, 2023. Which my first thought was Peru, I think. But I just don't know where in Peru. Like, it would have to be here. In Peru, because you do get a lot of dry mountains up here. Like this. I think Colombia is probably the safer guess. Just because Colombia is such a mountainous country, you will get a lot of this, but I've never seen super dry mountains like this. So I want to say Peru is safer. I wish we had like a signpost or something to go off of. But I feel like more commonly as well, like Peru will have just white outer lines with no inner lines sometimes on a lot of their roads. I mean, not the easiest here. But I think this is just a landscape in which I have to slam Peru on because of how dry the mountains are. And it was just Peru, very close to the Ecuador border. So I'm happy with that. We got 10 more rounds to go into and explain. And this one, we see the sun is very clearly north here on our screen. So we are in the southern hemisphere. Landscape does make a lot of sense, but which side of the border are we on in Chile or Argentina? I guess this poll is a bit more Argentine, but I have seen some pole spill on the border here. Landscape-wise, definitely feels like very far south, I'd say, because we're not seeing like hardly any trees besides some of these pines here. Maybe a little bit of bushes as well. It's a similar type feel to something that you would get in like this part of the U.S., but it's just a bit like more Andean of a climate, I guess. Especially with this late autumn coverage as well in Gen 3, definitely fits for both Argentina and Chile, especially in the border area. I guess with the poll, I lean a bit more Argentinian. And yeah, we're just going to drop it somewhere here and hope for the best. And it was Argentina, near south of Buenos Aires, Chico. Fair enough. Next round. All right. This round here, we do have a definitive meta here, I do believe, telling us the country. So we do have this Trident poll here. Plus the Gen 3. And the sun is pretty clearly north, I'd say. Shadows casting south once again. But with the Trident poll, you won't ever really get that Trident poll in Argentina. I feel like I've seen exceptions, but especially with the combination of the Trident poll, the dirt road, the Gen 3 coverage, most of Argentina is Gen 4 now anyway. And I feel like a road this big in Argentina would probably be covered in Gen 4, at least. And you have these like slight rolling hills. It's not completely dead flat. But in Uruguay, you will get these slight rolling hills plus the Trident pole. So we will be slamming that. And, you know, the fakest meta of all time is not overcast equals southwest. So I did hedge a bit more southwest there. All right. Once again, we have the red car here. So really not too much to talk about. Once again, 2021 copyright. So if you're not sure, you can confirm with the copyright as well. But the red car plus the 2021 copyright means I'm slamming somewhere near Circuit, and it was a bit more south. Oh, I mean, this road makes sense as well. Okay, that I probably should have thought about that a bit more, because you will get the red car, like east of Novosibirsk, this area in Tomsk, this white road here, stuff like that as well. So I don't know why I thought it was Circuit immediately, but we move into a very difficult round here. I really don't think I'm going to get the country here, guys, but we'll try our best. All right, late autumn coverage. 2024, Gen 3. I guess the copyright doesn't really matter because it's Gen 3, but not the easiest round here. Definitely feeling Europe a bit more just because of the landscape can't really place where in the US I would put this. So that's why I'm kind of ruling that out. I can't really place where in Canada I would put this, so I'm ruling that out as well. But man, not really the easiest round. I think with the autumn coverage, there's stuff that's reasonable, like Croatia. Serbia even is possible with the late autumn coverage in Gen 3. I don't know, even Spain or France here I could see. So with the best info that we have, Croatia does have a lot of overcast coverage. It does have a lot of autumn coverage as well in Generation 3 camera. So I think that's probably the safest guess. And it's all about risk mitigation, especially if you're playing duels and stuff like that. So I think Croatia is probably something that I would click here. And it was actually Romania, which, I mean, autumn coverage is maybe a bit more rare. I think it's like a bit more summer, but you can get some autumn coverage as well. Romania definitely makes sense as well on the dirt road here. But yeah, I mean, all things considered, this isn't too poor of a guess, because if your opponent goes like somewhere like Spain or France there, it's still possible for some points. All right. I mean, this just shows you that we can make blunders too, of course. And yeah, I'm not a perfect Streaks player. If I was the perfect Streaks player, then I would be top of the leaderboard. All right. This one, I mean, we can move through this one really fast. We do have an Australian bollard here. Sun is also north, shadows casting south. So with all of that, yeah, let's just put it in Australia. And it was there. And we'll play 5 more rounds. We're back in Australia again. These metal ladder pole looking type things with the red soil. Plus you get a lot of these like very skinny looking trees are all pretty much in that Darwin Northern Territories area. You can get it in Northern Wa as well, but this just looks too much like Darwin with the red soil plus the ladder poles. Plus these like very pink roads, very common up here. And yeah, was there. Alrighty then, this one looking like Canada. Trees definitely feel a bit more northern. You have a ton of these like Christmas looking pines as well. As for the region guess, it is a bit tough, I would say. I think New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, just strictly based off of vibes, probably works the best. Yeah, I'm trying to imagine if we could maybe see a transformer perpendicular to the, or facing the road here. It's possible. Maybe. But I think Canada, if we're just trying to get the country, it feels a bit more eastern with all of these Christmas pines and the dirt roads. So yeah, I'm just going to be clicking here. It was Nova Scotia, fair enough. All right, we'll move into this round here, in which we can see the back of a red car here. I'm not immediately sure what this is, actually. And I'm having a hard time. I guess the sun is south. So where does that put us then? The US, maybe? I guess would be my thought. You won't really get this red bumper light in any European country, if I'm not mistaken. And the asphalt road definitely feels like American infrastructure, I'd say. So with those two things and the sun south, I guess it could be Mexico, but it's probably not. Especially with the backlight, I feel like the backlight's a little bit rare. Yeah, I guess I'm going something like, with these pines? I guess I could be going something like California here, which is where I currently live. Yeah, I guess California, Oregon, something like that makes sense. It definitely feels more Western US, I think, with all of these pines. Eastern US has a bit more of a different feel to it, and the red soil certainly fits a bit more for Western US, in my opinion. So I think with the sun south, plus the pines, I think I'm just going to try something in Northern California. It was Oregon, which I'm quite happy with that guess. I mean, not the easiest round, so we'll take it. All right, this one, 2024, copyright Gen 4. We can see a little bit of the truck here. Just a bigger blur. It's going to look a little bit different from your normal car coverage. So you can tell that we're in a truck on this one. And, you know, the only truck coverage in Europe is going to be Turkey. Just looks like Turkey as well. You will get a lot of water tanks on houses in Turkey. And these rock walls definitely push me a bit more towards Gaziantep, Şanlıurfa, Mardin area. Somewhere down here, it's very dry. closer to the Syrian border. And you will get sparse trees as well. It shouldn't be Gaziantep because we don't have like those dome water tanks, which is like, I don't know, like this. Looks like the top of an arena. I guess like a basketball dome. But we do have different water tanks. Yeah, poles are with the rock walls as well, pushes me a bit more down here. But what else tells me it's Turkey? I mean, we have metal roofs. It's a very dry climate. And it's about ruling out countries, right? So it doesn't feel like anywhere really in most of continental Europe. This is technically Asian Turkey anyway. And stuff like, you know, Israel wouldn't fit. Jordan wouldn't fit because it's Gen 3. UAE doesn't really fit with the climate and stuff like that. And then a lot of the African stuff doesn't really fit as well. And we know it's not Americas. We know it's not Southeast Asia. We know it's not Australia. So with all of those things considered, I think Turkey is quite reasonable here. And it was actually in Şanlıurfa, but we're close enough. Probably should have just heads between Mardin and Şanlıurfa, but it happens. All right, one more round here. And, all right, pretty standard round. We do have the box blur, once again, that I've talked about numerous amounts of times on the channel. Yellow center line, plus a short plate. All those things, to me, equal either. Ooh, actually. I think it's still Guat, but it could be Dominican Republic. Ooh. You know what? It could be the DR, which scares me a little bit, but it does feel really flat, and I don't see a ridge to the north. And I feel like you would only get this rural coverage in the city with the ridge to the north, which is Santiago de los Caballeros. So I guess I go Guat here, but I'm a bit scared of Santiago de los Caballeros. And we go Guat somewhere flat in the south part. Okay, yeah. Well, it's just Guat. Was worried for nothing. But that's going to conclude the video, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Yeah, don't forget to drop a comment. Any questions that you guys might have for me in the comments down below. And drop a like and a sub as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time for another Play and Explain video. Peace.